Welcome to the Radio Revenue Podcast.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, we are so glad you could join us today for this deep dive. Our mission today is, it's an exciting one. We are going to explore the literal physical backbone of the digital economy.
Right.
Because, we hear about the cloud all the time, right? But the cloud is actually a highly engineered building sitting on a physical piece of real estate. So today we are looking at the 2025 Form 10K of Digital Realty Trust, or DLR.
DLR, yeah. They're one of the world's largest data center real estate investment trusts.
Exactly. And this document, it serves as a remarkably detailed blueprint of where the internet actually lives.
It really does. When we analyze a financial document like a 10K, especially a 2025 annual report for a company operating at this specific scale, we aren't just looking at a traditional real estate portfolio.
No, not at all.
This is a map of global digital transformation. It reveals the financial strategies, the capital allocation mechanics, and perhaps most importantly, the physical limitations of the digital world.
And what's wild to consider is that while you, our listener, are streaming this very deep dive right now, the data packets carrying our voices are almost certainly passing through a facility exactly like the ones we're discussing today.
Almost guaranteed, honestly.
Yeah. So we're taking this hefty financial document, stripping away all the dense accounting jargon, and extracting the critical insights. That way, you can truly understand the underlying economics of the internet's real estate.
Because to accurately evaluate the modern internet, you have to look past the software layer. You have to understand the physical constraints of moving, storing, and cooling massive amounts of data. This 10K provides a masterclass in how those physical constraints dictate global business strategies.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The 10K heavily references this concept called data gravity.
Ah, yes. Data gravity.
I find this framework just incredibly useful for understanding their moat. So if you imagine data as a planet, the larger that planet gets, the harder it is to move, right? And as it grows, its gravitational pull gets stronger. It literally pulls other applications, services, and networks into its orbit because being close by reduces latency.
That analogy is the foundational driver of Digital Realty's entire business model. Because enterprise data growth is accelerating at an unprecedented rate right now.
Oh, totally.
We are looking at the compounding effects of the Internet of Things, the continued rollout of 5G edge computing, and exactly, the massive, power-hungry computational requirements of artificial intelligence training models. As enterprises generate and analyze all this data, the resulting mass becomes incredibly heavy.
Right.
It becomes prohibitively expensive and risky to just relocate it.
Which means the traditional model, a company running its own server room down the hall.
It's completely obsolete.
Completely. The gravity is just too strong for them to handle the infrastructure in-house.
Building, cooling, securing, and sourcing the raw power for a modern data center is phenomenally complex today. Most global enterprises have realized that maintaining heavy IT infrastructure is a massive capital drain.
And it's not what they're good at.
Exactly. It's not their core competency. They are pushed towards specialized providers who can manage that gravity. Providers that offer the physical space, the intense power loads, and the cross-connects to link up directly with multiple cloud providers under one single roof.
And when you look at the raw footprint in this 2025 report, the scale is just difficult to contextualize.
It's massive.
They are operating 310 data centers spread across more than 55 metropolitan areas. They maintain a presence on 6 continents: North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia.
Yep.
And the power metric is what really jumps out. They have over 2.9 gigawatts of total in-place IT capacity.
2.9.
We are talking about grid-level power consumption dedicated entirely to servers and routers.
That 2.9 gigawatts is a staggering operational load. It requires intense negotiation with local utilities and grid operators across dozens of different regulatory environments globally.
But with 2.9 gigawatts of capacity, I do have to wonder about concentration risk. Are they essentially just acting as a proxy landlord for AWS, Google, and Microsoft? Because if those hyperscalers just decide to build their own facilities, does the whole model collapse?
That is a critical question.
Okay.
And the 10K addresses it directly through their customer diversification metrics. They have over 5,000 customers.
Okay. Wow.
Right. And their largest single customer, which the report notes is a Fortune 50 software company, accounts for only 11.7% of their aggregate annualized recurring revenue.
So they are maintaining a pretty healthy distance from total reliance on just one tech giant.
Yes. And beyond that 11.7%, no other single customer accounts for more than 9% of their revenue.
Yeah.
The tenant list includes enterprise players across cloud and IT services, social networking, manufacturing, financial services.
It's a broad mix.
Very broad. The document lists AT&T, JP Morgan Chase, Meta Platforms, Oracle. By diversifying across industries and avoiding the trap of being solely a hyperscale landlord, they insulate the portfolio against targeted sector downturns.
Okay, let's unpack this. 310 massive data centers drawing 2.9 gigawatts of power. Building out this infrastructure requires an astronomical amount of capital.
Astronomical is the right word.
And the report mentions they have 769 megawatts of projects currently under active development. How does a company afford to expand its global footprint at that aggressive pace, especially without taking on reckless leverage or just diluting their equity to oblivion?
The answer lies in their capital allocation strategy, specifically their reliance on strategic joint ventures, or JVs.
Okay.
Because they are bound by the standard REIT structure, which we'll discuss a bit later, they can't hoard cash. Building data centers requires a staggering amount of upfront capital for land acquisition, specialized structural engineering, heavy electrical procurement.
It adds up fast.
Exactly. So instead of funding all of that directly from their own balance sheet, they leverage private capital partnerships.
And the 2025 report outlines some massive moves on this front. Let's look at their expansion in Indonesia, for instance. In March 2025, they formalized a joint venture with Bersama Digital Infrastructure Asia to develop data centers in Jakarta. They acquired a 50% interest for roughly $94.7 million, securing 6 acres of land and 2 buildings capable of supporting a 32-megawatt IT load.
Jakarta is a crucial emerging market right now. It has rapidly growing local cloud demand and strategic subsea cable connectivity.
Yeah.
By utilizing a JV, Digital Realty shares both the upfront capital cost and the localized operational and geopolitical risk with a regional partner, someone who actually understands the specific nuances of the Indonesian market.
But the capital they are raising for their established markets is on another level entirely. Take the ongoing joint venture with Blackstone.
Oh, that's a huge one.
They're developing hyperscale campuses across Frankfurt, Paris, and Northern Virginia. In April 2025 alone, Digital Realty received $77 million in gross proceeds simply by contributing additional development projects at their Digital Dulles campus into this specific Blackstone JV.
The influx of private equity into the data center space is really a defining theme of the 2020s. Firms like Blackstone have mountains of dry powder, and they are desperate for the yield and stability that digital infrastructure provides.
Makes sense.
Digital Realty has the operational expertise, the tenant relationships, and the development pipeline, but they need that off-balance sheet financing. It is a highly symbiotic relationship.
And then we have the Digital Realty DC Partners NA Fund.
Yes.
This North American fund, launched in the first half of 2025, is just a masterclass in leverage. They raised over $3 billion in equity commitments.
That $3 billion in equity is designed to support approximately $10 billion in total data center investment across North America.
The 10K notes that in May 2025, Digital Realty contributed operating data centers and development projects to this fund and received $937 million in gross proceeds. And then later in the year, they contributed another 30% of their interest in 5 operating data centers, pulling in another $427 million. They still act as the general partner, they still manage the assets, but they have fundamentally restructured the capital stack.
What's fascinating here is the sheer financial engineering of the strategy. By bringing in private capital from entities like Blackstone or Mitsubishi in their Dallas joint ventures, Digital Realty expands its global platform digital footprint at a pace they could never achieve alone.
Right.
Crucially, they do it while maintaining a conservative corporate balance sheet. They secure massive cash injections up front, retain a minority equity stake often between 20 and 50% earned management fees for the day-to-day operations, and keep the tenants locked into their global ecosystem.
It's an incredibly efficient mechanism for managing capital intensity. But these joint ventures are not just funding concrete and steel. They are increasingly funding the massive renewable energy retrofits required by modern corporate mandates. Because, you as a listener might be looking at that 2.9 gigawatt figure and wondering about the environmental impact.
Absolutely.
Grid-level power consumption comes with intense scrutiny regarding carbon emissions and water usage for cooling.
The data center industry is facing severe regulatory and public pressure regarding its environmental footprint right now. However, The 10K outlines a sophisticated sustainability integration. They are treating environmental metrics with the exact same rigor as financial metrics.
Right.
They track 100% of their energy consumption across their managed assets.
And the reported results for 2025 are significant. According to the document, 73% of their energy consumption for managed assets is now sourced from renewables.
73%.
Yeah. They are executing this through complex wind and solar power purchase agreements, or PPAs, alongside green tariffs, and the industry is recognizing it. In 2025, they won the REIT Leader in the Light Award for data centers.
And winning that award for the 9th consecutive year, that indicates a sustained institutional priority. It's not merely a reactionary PR maneuver.
No, not at all.
But we have to view this through a commercial lens. Why dedicate so much capital to green energy?
Well, I would assume it is a vital competitive advantage. It's not just about corporate responsibility. It is an actual bidding requirement. Think about the Fortune 50 software companies and the global banks we mentioned earlier. They all have aggressive, legally binding climate pledges to reach net zero emissions.
Precisely the point. When a tech giant outsources its infrastructure to Digital Realty, they're also outsourcing their Scope 3 emissions. If the landlord is burning coal to power the servers, the tech giant fails its own climate audit.
Oh, wow. So a 73% renewable footprint is essentially a product feature.
It is.
If the real estate isn't green, they lose the RFP to a competitor who can actually provide carbon-neutral compliance.
It acts as a massive barrier to entry for smaller, legacy data center operators. They simply cannot afford the capital expenditure required to secure dedicated wind and solar PPAs. Digital Realty's scale allows them to procure green energy at rates that smaller competitors just cannot match, which attracts and retains the most lucrative premium tenants.
That makes the capital structure we discussed earlier even more critical. But let's pivot a bit to the risk factors.
Sure.
The 10K is required to lay out the bear case, right? And for a company tasked with building the internet's physical infrastructure, the risks are substantial. So what keeps the landlords of the internet awake at night?
The risk disclosures provide a very sobering counterweight to the growth narrative, honestly.
Correct.
The most prominent risk involves their speculative development pipeline. As of the end of 2025, Digital Realty reported 9.7 million square feet of space under active development.
Almost 10 million square feet currently under construction.
And a significant portion of this is built on speculation.
Right.
They are acquiring land, pouring concrete, and ordering multi-million-dollar electrical transformers long before they have a lease signed with a tenant.
That seems like an extraordinary macro risk. Building highly specialized, capital-intensive infrastructure without a guaranteed customer in a tech market that can be incredibly volatile. If the current AI hype cycle cools down, or if capital expenditures from the hyperscalers contract, what happens to that 9.7 million square feet?
That is the exact vulnerability the 10K highlights. They build on speculation because the digital economy demands immediate deployment.
Right, they can't wait.
Exactly. When a cloud provider needs capacity for a new product rollout, they cannot wait 24 months for a facility to be constructed from scratch. They need the space ready yesterday. But if macroeconomic conditions shift and demand evaporates, Digital Realty is left holding massive, incredibly expensive, empty facilities.
And the 10K explicitly points out that even an empty data center incurs substantial carrying costs. You've got property taxes, security, basic maintenance, debt servicing. That is a heavy burden if the market experiences a prolonged cooling period.
Furthermore, they highlight severe supply chain and power availability constraints. We're seeing unprecedented lead times for critical electrical infrastructure, securing backup generators, specialized cooling chillers, high-voltage transformers. It takes years of advanced planning.
And even if you secure the equipment, you are entirely at the mercy of the local power grid.
Completely.
The 10K details how dependent they are on utility infrastructure. If a region experiences grid instability, or if local utilities simply refuse to grant new power connections due to capacity limits, which, by the way, we've seen in major hubs like Northern Virginia and Dublin, it severely restricts their operational capacity.
Yep.
You can build the most advanced facility on Earth, but if the utility cannot deliver the megawatts, it is effectively useless.
This raises an important question regarding the evolving regulatory landscape. The risk section explicitly flags environmental laws and climate change mandates as a major headwind.
Even with their aggressive push to 73% renewable energy, the regulatory threat remains that high.
Yes, because local zoning boards and international regulatory bodies are constantly shifting the goalposts. New ordinances targeting water usage for cooling towers or mandating stricter energy efficiency ratios could force Digital Realty into unanticipated, massive capital expenditures,
Just to keep up.
just to retrofit their existing portfolio to comply with new legal standards. It is a constant battle against regulatory obsolescence.
Okay, so we have covered the global scale, the joint venture financial engineering, the sustainability mandates, and the inherent development risks. Let's pull back the curtain on the actual financial engine driving the returns.
Let's do it.
Digital Realty operates as a REIT, a real estate investment trust. Because they are bound by the standard REIT mandate to distribute at least 90% of their taxable income back to shareholders as dividends, they can't utilize internal cash flow to fully fund their expansion.
That 90% distribution rule forces them onto a permanent capital markets treadmill. They must continuously issue debt, sell equity, or execute those joint ventures we discussed to fund their development pipeline. It is a model that requires constant access to liquidity.
But the revenue machine supporting those dividends and servicing that debt is formidable. The 2025 financials show their rental and other services generated nearly $5.97 billion in revenue.
We have to look at the quality and stability of that nearly $6 billion. The portfolio sits at an 84.7% leased rate. More importantly, we look at the weighted average lease term, or WALT. At the end of 2025, their average remaining lease term was roughly 5 years.
That stickiness is crucial. Moving a data center is not like vacating an office building. Once an enterprise installs millions of dollars of server racks and establishes complex fiber cross-connects within a Digital Realty facility, the switching costs, both financially and in terms of potential network downtime, are painfully high.
That high switching cost practically guarantees recurring revenue. To further optimize that revenue stream, they utilize an aggressive capital recycling strategy. They continuously evaluate their portfolio to identify mature, slower growth assets that can be monetized.
The 10K provides a perfect example of this. In 2025, they sold off non-core data centers in the Atlanta, Miami, Boston, and Dallas metro areas for about $124 million.
Right.
They recognized a $33 million gain on that sale. They then take that capital and immediately deploy it into higher growth, higher yield opportunities. Things like their hyperscale campus developments in Northern Virginia or their new joint venture in Jakarta.
Capital recycling ensures they aren't trapping equity in stagnant markets. They're constantly pruning the lower performing edges of the portfolio to feed the core markets where data gravity is pulling the hardest.
So what does this all mean? When we step back from the billions of dollars in joint ventures, the massive gigawatt power loads, and the dense regulatory risks, what is the core takeaway for you, our listener? It means that the digital world you rely on is profoundly, heavily physical. Every time you send an email, stream a high-definition video, or utilize a cloud-based AI tool, you are leaning on a massive, interconnected, and highly engineered physical infrastructure. The cloud is not an abstract concept.
Not at all.
It is a heavily secured, power-hungry fortress sitting on a concrete slab in places like Frankfurt, Jakarta, and Northern Virginia. And companies like Digital Realty are the landlords orchestrating the economics of that physical reality.
And that physical reality forces us to consider a fascinating implication for the future of technology. If data gravity dictates that these centers will simply continue to expand, absorbing more applications, networks, and localized services as global data volume explodes, what happens when these individual facilities become so massive and so essential that they effectively operate as self-contained digital cities?
A self-contained digital city, the infrastructure requirements for that would be staggering.
We might be approaching a fundamental paradigm shift. Will the future architecture of the internet be defined not by the elegance of the software code we write, but by the brutal physical limitations of the real estate? We are pushing the boundaries of physics regarding heat dissipation and power density. The ultimate bottleneck for the next generation of technological innovation might not be human ingenuity or processing power, but simply securing enough contiguous land and grid-level electricity to keep the servers running.
That is a phenomenal thought to end on. The physical real estate dictating the actual evolution of technology itself. It was Revenue Radio Podcast. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with our latest analyses.